Good evening, gentlemen. As promised, I said I'd be back to do a little bit of a refresh after our Thursday night game, being that we had what I thought A.J. Green and the tight end Gresham for Cincinnati facing off against the deep dish and the Cincy defense. But last minute breaking news development in the Thursday night game, Jerkback decides to go with Martellus Bennett over what's his name, if you will. And actually, I do feel like that was actually kind of a smart move, if you will, looking at past scores in the last 2 or 3 weeks. But with that said, this is our championship, week 15 in 5, still searching. And for the first time in the history of this illustrious league that we're 6 or 7 of us have been part of this since the beginning. I am not included in that, along with Sterl, Jimmy Thing, and a few others. But we've got Jerkback against Deep Dishin. Rematch almost of a semifinal matchup a couple of years ago. Jerkback has been here many times before, and really just starting to break down the matchups. I really feel that for Jerkback, things do bode well for him. I think for deep dishing, Eli is going to need to bode well and really bring some thunder against Atlanta just to keep up with Cam Newton, who has probably been the most on-fire performer from a fantasy standpoint lately in the last 3 weeks. Adrian Peterson has also done really well, but I think from a scoring standpoint, not quite as well as Cam. I think that it's going to be interesting to see what both Ray Rice does with the new offensive coordinator against Denver, as well as what Reggie Wayne does against Houston. And I do have fears around Indianapolis being able to, or Andrew Luck being able to get past J.J. Watt and company in Houston in particular. If they can get by that, I think that there is some exposure on the secondary front. I think that with Ray Rice, he's going to get more touches, but how creative can this new offensive coordinator be? And then I think when you look at Alexander and Julio Jones, you also do wonder. I think that Alexander could have a good a good game. Julio Jones needs to have a monster performance. And then one of the X factors is clearly Brandon Myers against Kansas City, coming off a 1-point game last week. I can't see Bowman doing much in New England because of the way that New England does pass the ball, but I could be wrong. But I do expect on the flip side, not only for Cam Newton to do well, but I think Ridley should bode well. I think Doug Martin really could be the main X factor or the star of the Super Bowl matchup, going against a very bruised New Orleans defense who just cannot stop the run. We saw what Wilson and company did for the Giants last week against New Orleans. One thing I will say is that at least New Orleans is at home, being part of the Super Bowl matchup. I think that Alfred Morris will be somewhat limited against Cleveland, especially if RG3 doesn't play. Wes Welker against San Fran should also be interesting, but like we saw against with Michael Crabtree at Green Bay in Week 1, you can certainly, if you have a system offense, expose San Fran on the receiving end to certain things, and I think that it bodes well for Wes Welker. Lastly, I do kind of like Martellus Bennett. I'm not sure if he's going to have a 20-point game. If Bennett has a 20-point game, I think it's going to be lights out. Janikowski against Kansas City should bode well. And really, can Seattle match the performance for Cincinnati? And they certainly could do so. I don't know how well Darrell Washington does against a pass-happy Detroit offense, if you will. But I really think that Jerkback gets in the either late 150s or 160, and he does edge deep dish by about 18 to 26 points, if you will. And how fitting that the man who probably jacks off the most to fantasy has so much passion. His passion bucket spills over to all of us. Like many others of us, of course, with fantasy becomes our first 2-time champ. With that said, good luck, and for everyone else, enjoy the matchup.